Good morning. It's just after 5 here outside of Calgary. Today we're going to focus on a little bit of back bending, starting off with some hip work and then some supportive back bending, and then we'll get into a little bit more. Okay, so we need to have a bolster and a strap, which we're going to begin with right now. And then I also have a prop I call a spinal strip. You can also use a second rolled mat or a blanket or a towel instead of this. All right, so have the strap really close by. And set yourself up on your bolster and have your legs in Baddha Konasana. So your feet are touching, bolster is supporting the legs. And let's just breathe. So good morning to those of you who are joining me around this time zone or close to it, and good afternoon to others, and have a great sleep after this one to the others who are watching. And just feel how your day, how whatever has preceded this moment, how it has been with you and you have been with it. Check in with your headspace. What's driving you to your mat today, or did you have to drag yourself to your mat today? Let's just get a sense of where your state is. And let your breath come in and out like your body's receiving the breath in and letting it go on the way out. Few more breaths. And then let's take the strap now, and you're going to bring the strap around one foot up into Supta Padangusthasana. So I've kept one leg over the bolster just to allow that leg to settle into the hip. Because back bends have a lot to do with the hips. Okay, and you can have your hands up the strap if that's comfortable for your shoulder. Allow your hands to be decoration if that's what you're doing, and so you're not holding the strap trying to squeeze the living bejesus out of it. Or if your neck and your shoulders don't allow for that, just let your elbows rest on the floor. And this knee that's up towards the sky can be bent if you want, or it can be straight, totally up to you. Just honor what's going on with your hip and your pelvis. So back bending is about our spine. Without extending through the spine, we won't go into a back bend. But there's a foundation to come into that back bend, which really has a huge reliance on our hips and the shoulders too, for sure. But when we can become aware of the pelvis and the legs and how that connects in with the spine, I think people gain just a different perspective and awareness, and a lot of things that were visible, or were invisible rather, become visible. Let's take the strap into your opposite hand to the leg that's up and bring the leg across your body, but keep your pelvis on the ground. So don't come into a twist. We're just bringing the leg into adduction across the body. And then bring the leg back up. And then bring that leg down and take a moment resting it over the bolster, and notice if there's any distinction between the left and the right sides. And then bring the opposite foot up. If your hands are up the strap, just make sure your neck and your upper shoulders are super comfy and that you're holding the strap as decoration. And if you don't have that capacity right now, let your arms come down to the floor. And then bring that leg across your body. Pelvis is on the ground. And then bring that leg back up and strap comes off. And again, rest that leg. So now both legs are over the strap, or over the bolster. All right, and bring those feet up now. Knees are bent. You can keep the bolster here. Depends on the size of the bolster. You might find it sort of annoying if it's too big of a bolster for this next position. And that is, you're going to take the ankle onto the knee. Now remember, when you brought that ankle onto the knee, let me just move the bolster away so you can see this. So when we bring in the ankle onto the knee, that pelvis is staying quiet. And let's just move this leg bone, the one that's up. So for me, it's the one away from your camera, and it's my left one. So I'm rotating that left leg in the socket, but I'm not using the front of my hip to do that. So I'm going to come just a little bit closer to show this to you. I'm going to do it in standing. So if I've got my ankle up onto my knee, my pelvis hasn't moved, and I'm moving this leg bone into rotation. When I move that leg bone away, this area here is getting longer. I don't want to contract muscles here to make that movement happen. So we want to keep this area here nice and soft as the leg comes away. In fact, what's actually doing that movement is coming more from here. So you can actually put your hand in the front and in through the back like this, so you can actually feel it. Now try not to like clench your bum to make the leg move. Rather just think leg bone movement in pelvis, and notice where the tonality, where the contraction, where the grip, where whatever you want to call it, where that is. And notice the quality of the movement, right? Notice the quality of the contraction, because that's a really important piece of moving well. Yeah, is the quality of it as much as moving what we actually want to move. Okay, so if I come back hip here, we're playing around with, sorry, I'm getting a little bit of a mic problem here. So we're playing around with that leg bone movement in the pelvis. And just to check in with the other side, because sometimes what can happen is we can brace with the opposite foot, the one that's on the floor, and then that can create tension in the other hip. So my left leg is the one that's moving. If I was to go too hard, or if I wasn't doing it well or whatever, then I might feel something in my right front hip. Or I had a client yesterday who was starting to feel it in her right outer hip because she was bracing to do the movement. And so we don't want those things to happen. Okay, let's switch to the other side. We'll get this foundational piece done, and then you're rotating the leg bone, keeping the front of the hips really nice and quiet. Okay, so now from here, this is where the bolster comes in. We're taking the ankle up onto the knee. I'll bring the bolster over here, and I'll just angle myself out a bit different. And we're going to rotate our body over towards that bolster. So ankles on the knee, rotate over. Now you might be able to go all the way to the floor, which is totally fine. Go for it. Just make sure that your feet, like what can sometimes happen when we go too far is that leg slides over, or we shift our pelvis. Now the pelvis is going to lift, but we want to keep it a rotation and coming onto the outside edge of the foot. And now what also makes this really interesting is if you have your hands in the front of your hips and you take that movement over towards the bolster, you want to keep the front of the hips totally quiet. Right? It's a rotation motion. Now we're moving a little with gravity as we come closer to the bolster. And so then if we don't have the control in our abdomen, then what might happen is our hip flexors might contract to help control that movement, and we want that not to happen. So just pay attention to how far you actually can go and work there, right? And then you can start to gain a little understanding of what parts are working and what parts aren't necessarily coming in line. No biggie. Like, it's not that you have to get your abdomen working today. That's not the point. It's more the point is like, just notice what's what. There's certainly days for me, if I've been out for a longer run, or if I've done, a workout or something and my tissue is a little bit more limited, then things might not be firing the way they ought to, right? And so it's kind of like, oh, look at that. Isn't that interesting? It's not something that I freak out about. It's not something that I freak out about with my clientele. It's more, again, it's allowing that which is invisible to become visible. You're becoming aware of the things you were unaware of. All right, lovely. Okay, and let's take that down. Okay, now we're going to bring out the spinal strip. So spinal strip is here. You can use a rolled blanket. You can even use a bolster if you want. Where we're going to place this is right opposite the bottom of the breastbone. Okay, so we're going to be leaning back from this point. I'm going to have a strap close by too. So here, I'm resting back. So the spinal strip is right opposite the bottom of my breastbone. It's right at about my bra strap, and I'm resting here. So my pelvis is lower than my head, which requires some extension of the spine. Now, you might find that if you're set up with a blanket or your own spinal strip, that there's some tension in your lower back, or maybe even where the spinal strip is, right at that area around the opposite part of the breastbone. So it's just raise your hips up a little bit and place something underneath your hips, whether it's a blanket or a block, and see if that makes a difference. It may just be that the amount of front line releasing or the extension is just a bit too much for you at this moment. And really let yourself settle into this version of a back bend. And then grab hold of your strap and take the strap and your hands up to the sky. So your hands are shoulder width apart, and you're going to raise those hands up to the sky and then bring the shoulders back to the floor. So raising them up and bringing them back. Raising them up and bringing them back. And by back, what I mean is you're protracting and then retracting. Protracting, retracting. And then from here, the arms are going to come over your head. Now, as you bring the arms over your head, just be conscientious of how those arm bones are moving in your sockets. And if there's any wobbling or wiggling or crunchiness or clicking or clacketing, and can you move in a range that's smooth and that doesn't have the clicking, clacketing, clunking, and there's no pain, or at least your pain's not going up. Okay, and then bring that down, take a rest for a moment. Okay, now up here in Canada, in the winter, a really common fun little thing we do is make snow angels. You might not have snow where you are, so you might make sand angels. The idea is that you bring those arms up towards your ear and then back down. Now think about keeping your fingertips or your fingernails on the floor as you move, and only move as far as it's easy and your jaw's not clenching and you're not adding more tension into your system, and just be aware of what it is that you feel. Yeah. Good. Okay, now bring that down and then rest your hands maybe on your belly. And just breathe. Okay, we're going to roll off. Take whatever prop is underneath you, take that away, and just lie back on your back now. Okay, so now from here we're going to do a little bit of a bridge. So the movement of bridge is we extend through the hips, okay, and then we come back down. We move through the hips and up. Now, I'm not a huge fan, it doesn't make it wrong, but I'm not a huge fan of pushing your feet down first and then lifting your hips. That's just a personal preference. It doesn't mean you can't do it. One thing I do just for curiosity and fun, are you pushing your feet down in order to lift the hips? And can you instead feel the 3 points of your feet, the center of the heel, the ball of your foot, and base of pinky toe? Just feel them on the floor and then start to extend your hips so that the generation of the force is arising out of your hips, not from the pressure down through your feet. Now again, I want to emphasize that however you do your movement is right for you. I'm offering this up as just a curiosity and an awareness, so don't take my word for it and don't think I'm making you wrong. It's more just something to have you become curious about. Okay, we're going to go for one more. Good. And then just rest there for now. Now, when we finish back bending, there ought not to be any strain at all in our lower back. If there is, it just lets us know that we've gone too far or there just wasn't enough support or stability. So now let's roll over onto our bellies. We're going to do a very, very gentle, little gentle cobra. So hands are going to come underneath your shoulders. And I want you to imagine that you can peel your breastbone like, I don't know if they're still around, fruit roll-ups. Peel them off of that wax paper. Okay? So we're not getting right into the lower back. We're keeping the pelvis easy on the floor so you can feel the pubic bone and the two front of the hip bones, the ASIS. And we're just peeling that breastbone off of the floor. Good. And then coming on down. And the legs are not lifting off the floor. We're just keeping the legs easy on the floor, moving the upper body. And just feel what that feels like. Okay, now I want you to roll over onto your back. Now tomorrow we're going to do a little bit more back bending and get into a bit more details with this. But for now, I just want you to feel the movement. So from here, you're going to take yourself back up into bridge and then down, back up into bridge and down, and one more. Back up into bridge and down. Okay, lovely. Now just feel what you feel and bring one hip up, like leg bone up at 90 degrees. Place the hand on the front of the knee. Press the knee into the hand. And so there's a little bit of hip flexion. The angle is not changing. This is an isometric contraction. And then bring it back down. And then other side. Good. And then bring that down. Roll on over now, and let's come on up into sitting. And I'm going to come up onto this bolster. You can come up into a chair if you'd like. Have something underneath your hips just because it's a little bit easier to sit up and become more vertical. And then you're here. And just feel what you feel now in vertical. Now tomorrow we will do a little bit more exploring into that cobra sphinx, playing around with the feet and the shoulders, and how that contributes to back bend. Bring the hands together into Anjali Mudra. Place the middle finger under your chin. Let's take a little bit of a twist. And then come back, and then other side. Easy, 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 easy. And so you'll see that the way that I'm twisting is I'm not moving my pelvis. I know that there's plenty of people who do that, so just notice what you're doing. The reason I don't is I like to stay in contact with my obliques and to really feel the relationship between my ribs and my pelvis. Okay, now from here, let's take a little side bend over to the side. Think about a beach ball. Arm comes up. If you can. Hand can always come back down here, or here, or here. And then coming on back up. Same thing. And see if you can keep a little bit of weight through the sitting bone that you're leaning away from. So it's not, all the weight's not over on this side that way. Good. And then come on back. All right, lovely. Now sit here and now just notice what it is that you feel. Really great. So now you may want to do a more vigorous practice or do other types of workout. Or like me, you might want to go upstairs and grab a warm drink and start the rest of your day. Whatever you do, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Take care.